Chesapeake too, and I think that hopefully we'll get lucky, but maybe that won't happen. But we're prepared.
We're prepared. It is Wednesday, October 10th, and this is Fox and Friends First, happening right now at 4 a.m. A Fox News alert for you. Bracing for impact, Hurricane Michael reaches Category 4 status, bearing down on the Gulf Coast. We have live team coverage tracking the storm's new path as residents prepare for the worst. And Nikki Haley resigns as UN ambassador in a surprise announcement. Speculation swirling this morning, of course, about her future and President Trump's short list to replace her. We're live in Washington. And check out your tickets. We have the numbers for the $500 million Mega Millions lottery. Are you feeling lucky? Fox and Friends First starts right now. Very dark morning here in New York City, and along the East Coast down in Florida, they are bracing for a very stormy one. Good morning to you. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Wednesday morning. I'm Heather Childers. Thank you so much, as always, for starting your day with us. Let's get right to this, though. Hurricane Michael gaining steam as outer bands start lashing the Gulf Coast. The potentially deadly Category 4 monster could be the area's strongest landfall in 13 years. Griff Jenkins is live for us in Alligator Point, where preparations are well underway. So you're right down there in the thick of it, Griff. How you doing?
Good morning, Heather. We are, and you haven't made your preparations or you hadn't gotten out here along the Panhandle coast, it's too late, because this storm is fast approaching, and where we are on the east side of where they expect the eye to make landfall in near Panama City. And the residents here remember 13 years ago, Hurricane Dennis made landfall as a Category 3 near Pensacola. Well, it's going to be closer to us, and this area in particular is very, very low-lying, and they are really, really worried about the threat, possibly unprecedented, that Michael is going to bring. This is Lieutenant Chris Savory with Wakulla County down here. Here's what he had to say.
This is a storm surge that is without precedent here in this county. We've had a hurricane in the past where we had 10 feet of storm surge, and people couldn't believe it. Well, now we're going to add a couple more feet on top of that, and you're talking about major destruction of property and serious safety issues for those who live in those areas.
All right, Heather, I'm going to try and show you because it is dark, but behind me, this is the house. This is along Alligator Point in Franklin County, mandatory evacuation, Wakulla mandatory evacuation. You can see the waves just starting to hit the houses. The road that runs along here is definitely going to be washed out. It got washed out 2 years ago in Hermine. Many of these houses are at risk of being entirely washed away. You can see the waves crashing up on the stilts of these houses. For at least 60 miles out to this ocean, it is very shallow. That is an unbelievable threat, because this Category 4 storm is going to bring 60 miles of shallow water and dump it right on top of here. We will have to egress in a few hours because the people here are in grave danger of flooding, Heather.
Yeah, you have to egress, in other words, get out and get to safety. Saw those waves popping up behind you. I know that storm surge is very concerning. Griff, thank you so much. We appreciate your coverage. As always, we will have more Jonathan Siri in Panama City, and then we'll have Janice Dean, of course, with the latest on the storm's track coming up. Thank you. Well, the other big story. Then there were 5. President Trump narrowing his list of candidates to replace UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Doug Luzader joins us now live from Washington, D.C. with a closer look at who is under consideration and who's not. Good morning, Doug.
Heather, good morning. This really was a surprise yesterday, this announcement that Haley is leaving. She's well-liked, well-respected within the administration, and the two of them really kept this under wraps, apparently, for a while. They did meet at the White House to make this announcement. The president heaped praise on Nikki Haley.
I just want to let you know, so at the end of the year, Nikki will be leaving?
It has been an honor of a lifetime. I think that it's just very important for government officials to understand when it's time to step aside.
So who will replace Nikki Haley as the administration's point person at the United Nations? Well, some names are being floated out there. The president himself seemed to float the idea of his daughter Ivanka Trump, but then also seemed to dismiss it, saying it would be perceived as nepotism. Other possible candidates include former Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell and U.S. Ambassador to Germany Rick Grenell. The president said he was considering, I guess, a long list at this point of 5 individuals, and that he would make an announcement, Heather, in coming weeks.
Interesting. And I know Ivanka Trump, she dismissed the idea as well on Twitter. And then in terms of Rick Grenell, the president later said, you know, he would like to keep him in Germany, I should say. So it's anybody's guess. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Well, Nikki Haley's reason for leaving, that remains a mystery this morning. Something Fox News contributor and Washington Post columnist Mark Thiessen says is actually refreshing in this administration.
The interesting thing is we don't know what the reasons are for why she stepped down, but let's say they were policy reasons or policy disagreements of some kind. Wouldn't it be refreshing the fact that we don't know, that she didn't go decide and leak them and publicly air her differences? I remember when the senior official wrote that infamous op-ed in the New York Times, she wrote a counter op-ed in the Washington Post in which she said, I'm also a senior official in the Trump administration. I support the president and his direction, but we don't agree on everything. And when I disagree with him, I pick up the phone and call him and tell him. So if there was a policy difference here, what a classy lady that she didn't air those differences in any way in the public, but just told the president to his face.
Yep. She says she's not running in 2020. She will support the president. Ambassador Haley stepping down after 2 years in her post, but she will have served longer than 5 of her last 10 predecessors. So there's a bit of trivia for you. Well, President Trump going after Democrats during a spirited rally in Iowa 4 weeks ahead of the midterms.
The Democrats have become too extreme, and they've become, frankly, too dangerous to govern. Democrats are the party of crime. Republicans are the party of safety. We are also the party of jobs, jobs, jobs. How about Senator Feinstein? That's another beauty.
Well, the president calling out big-name Democrats in Council Bluffs, notably those who strongly opposed Justice Brett Kavanaugh. President Trump takes his midterm message to Pennsylvania tonight. Very busy out on the road. Well, the former Democratic staffer arrested for revealing personal information of Republican senators will remain behind bars. A judge denying bail for Jackson Costco after prosecutors called him a flight risk. Now, Costco is accused of releasing addresses and phone numbers of senators who backed Justice Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court. Police say they found a list of targets inside his home, along with cocaine and meth. Prosecutors believe he used drugs on Capitol Hill. In the meantime, Justice Kavanaugh ready to hear more cases after making his Supreme Court debut. President Trump's second appointee to the Supreme Court took his seat on the bench where Chief Justice John Roberts wished him a long and happy career. This week's cases involve sentencing guidelines to the detention of immigrants, and we're going to talk much more about that coming up a little bit later. But right now, let's talk music. The American Music Awards, they brought performances and politics. Shocker. Taylor Swift kicking off the night with her song I Did Something Bad, just days after breaking her political silence. Well, Swift getting more political, accepting the Artist of the Year award.
You know what else is voted on by the people? The midterm elections on November 6th. Get out and vote.
And then Khalid endorsing Texas Democrat Beto O'Rourke as he collected the Soul R&B Artist Award.
Shout out to the 915. Shout out to El Paso, Texas. Shout out Beto. I love you guys. Peace.
But politics wasn't the only thing getting people talking. How about this? Some viewers questioning whether Mariah Carey was actually really singing on stage. What do you think? Can't really tell. She's got the mic right at her mouth. Well, the biggest winners of the night, Taylor Swift and Camila Cabello, both took home 4 awards. I wonder if the president was watching Taylor Swift. Well, the Boston Red Sox, how about some sports? They hold off the New York Yankees in a game that went down to the wire.
It's the 1-2. Bouncing ball, going to be a tough play. Nunez gloves, throws, and time for the out.
Wow, a close play to end the game as Boston wins 4-3, advancing to the American League Championship Series. They will play the Astros on Saturday, while the Brewers and the Dodgers play in the National League Championship Series on Friday. Well, it's about 10 minutes after the top of the hour now. The question of the day, who will replace Nikki Haley as UN ambassador? Our next guest says that person has big shoes to fill. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis breaks down the key qualities Haley's replacement needs to have.
She is a talented young woman. Of course, I support women.
That's gracious. Marsha Blackburn responding to Taylor Swift's rare political slam.
Never gonna be as mean. Someday I'll be big enough so you can't hit me. And all you're ever.
Well, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley announcing her surprise resignation as she leaves behind a lasting impact of putting America first on the world stage. President Trump narrowing the short list of replacements to 5 people, we're told. So what is he looking for? Joining me now with some insight is military expert Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it this morning.
Certainly. My pleasure for being here.
So were you surprised about this move yesterday? Let's just start with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anybody, unless you had some inside information, I don't think anybody had any idea that Secretary Haley would be moving on because, you know, she's been very much a mainstay out the front from the very beginning, one of the first ones of the Trump cabinet that was actually appointed. So it was a little bit of a surprise, yeah. Yeah,
she's been very active, definitely putting America first, which is in line with the president's agenda. So would that be key in terms of who the president decides to move forward in her position?
Yeah, I do. I really think it's very important. And you've seen Trump kind of do a number of these things over time to find just the right fit. Because, you know, we first started off with Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State, and that didn't seem to be a good fit. But what did replace him was Michael Pompeo, with whom the president had a really good relationship. You saw that with H.R. McMaster, you know, looking good on paper, but the fit just wasn't good. And now then he has Bolton, who has a good personal relationship with. And I think that the president should probably find someone right now who is a good fit for him like that. And there's certainly a number of good candidates out there. Somebody who definitely is going to continue to put the United States first, but is also going to be a good diplomat.
Yeah, apparently from what I've been reading, and there's a lot that came out almost instantly, that there are 2 camps in the White House at this time as to who to move forward into the position. Dina Powell's one of those being considered. She's Goldman Sachs background. She's also got some experience at the State Department while working at the White House. She's apparently, you know, come into favor with Ivanka, but she's more of an internationalist foreign policy type person, which would be one side of the camp. And then you have people like Rick Grenell, I know you want to talk about, and he would be more fall in line with what we've seen so far with the president.
Well, he would, and certainly, you know, there's both of those candidates are very qualified. There's no doubt about that. Although another candidate I've heard his name tossed around there, which I would certainly suggest get some serious consideration, is Senator Rand Paul. And the reason I say that is because he does have a good relationship with the president. You know, he ran against him in the campaign, but they were able to put their differences aside, and they've actually worked together on some very important foreign policy issues like Afghanistan, the situation in Syria. And I think that maybe above anybody else, Rand Paul has a good tie-in with the instincts of the president, which has been very good on foreign policy almost across the board.
Really?
And that's what he needs, somebody who's loyal to the president, but who definitely puts America first and is willing to be diplomatic or harsh depending on what the circumstances need.
Exactly. And we certainly saw Nikki Haley be both of those things in the past 2 years. Thank you very much for joining us, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Have a great day.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, the time now is about 17 minutes after the top of the hour, and a dire warning from Senator Rand Paul, speaking of him, after weeks of violent anti-Kavanaugh protest.
I feel that there's going to be an assassination. I really worry that someone is going to be killed.
Man. But apparently, Hillary Clinton wasn't listening. Jackie Ibanez is here with her new message to Republicans and the instant backlash. Hi.
do. Look what you made me do. Look what you just made me do.
Well, Taylor Swift called her out, and now Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn is hitting right back. The Tennessee congressional candidate outlining the ways that she helps women after Swift said that the Republicans' voting record terrified her.
Of course I support women, and I want violence to end against women. I've been very active in abuse shelters and in child advocacy centers. I've been advocating for women in equal pay since I was 19 years old, and making certain that women have the opportunity for maximum pay and have a good record on that.
Well, Swift says that she's voting for Democrats. Remember the teacher who posted a tweet threatening to kill Brett Kavanaugh? Well, the teacher has resigned. An unidentified special education teacher in Minnesota tweeting, quote, "So who's going to take one for the team and kill Kavanaugh?" Her account has been deleted. She was previously placed on administrative leave. Federal and local authorities are investigating. You know, threats like that, they need to be taken seriously. That is the word from Senator Rand Paul, who is now warning, quote, "Somebody is going to be killed." Jackie Ibanez joins us now live as fear of potential violence grows following the Kavanaugh confirmation. Good morning.
Good morning, Heather. Rand Paul taking aim at the negative rhetoric circulating on Capitol Hill. The senator speaking out on a Kentucky radio show saying it could spiral into something deadly. Listen.
I feel that there's going to be an assassination. I really worry that someone is going to be killed, and that those who are ratcheting up the conversation, they have to realize that they bear some responsibility if this elevates to violence.
The Kentucky senator specifically calling out Democrat Cory Booker for these past comments, which Paul says is fueling violence in our nation.
Get up and please get up in the face of some Congress people.
Last week, Paul was chased and yelled at by anti-Kavanaugh activists at a Washington airport. His new comments come as failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton says this about playing hardball with Republicans.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. That's why I believe if we are fortunate enough to win back the House and/or the Senate, that's when civility can start again.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell giving her a taste of his own medicine.
She told CNN exactly how she views millions of Americans who hold different political views from her own. No peace until they get their way. More of these unhinged tactics. Apparently, this is the left's rallying cry. The Senate and the nation will not be intimidated.
All right, so we asked you, do you think Senator Rand Paul has a point, or is that going too far? Nina on Instagram says he's spot on. Tom on Facebook says he's exactly right. It's not a matter of how, but when. It doesn't have anything to do with Justice Kavanaugh. It's all the Democratic Party. And Gloria on Twitter writes this: the Hubs and I have been concerned about this issue for some time. The anger level in the country is concerning. Praying for all. Heather?
That is true. It is very concerning. We're going to talk more about this coming up with our political panel. They're going to debate it. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We still have 2 chances to get filthy rich this week. The Mega Millions jackpot soaring to $548 million, $500 million after no one won last night. The lucky numbers 20, 22, 39, 54, 60 with a mega ball of 18. And Friday's prize will be the 3rd largest jackpot in Mega Millions history. And tonight is a huge Powerball drawing with $282 million up for grabs. I'd take that too. Either one's fine. And if you win, share it with us. This Fox News alert for you, though, breaking overnight. Hurricane Michael, we have to talk about that. It's now a Category 4. It's just hours away from making landfall. We have live team coverage in the eye of the storm as Janice Dean tracks its latest path. And a major immigration case is on the docket today at the Supreme Court. So what can we expect from Justice Kavanaugh? A closer look at the case and its impact on more than 1 million immigrants. Welcome back. That's the top of the hour. Fox News alert for you. Breaking overnight, Hurricane Michael now upgraded to an extremely dangerous Category 4 storm. Now, the monster system bringing a possible life-threatening surge with up to a foot of rain. We have live Fox News team coverage. Jonathan Siri live on the ground in Panama City Beach, expected to be one of the hardest hit areas. But let's start with senior meteorologist Janice Dean. She's here. She's tracking the latest path. People need to know where it's headed. Good morning, Janice.
Right. A lot of us waking up and seeing a Category 4 and knowing that this is going to be potentially devastating for this area. The Panhandle of Florida has never gone through what they are about to go through in the next several hours. So Cat 4, 130 mile per hour sustained winds. New advisory, complete advisory coming out in less than a half an hour. So we'll have that for you at the top of 5 a.m. You can see it. It's an incredible looking storm. It is going to be devastating for this area. The storm surge of upwards over 12 feet along the west coast of Florida. Here's the Saffir-Simpson scale, and this is how we gauge hurricanes. We're up to a 4, so 130 to 156 miles per hour. It's going to remain a 4 as it makes landfall in the next couple of hours. We're looking at the potential for tornadoes as well. No tornado watches or warnings, but that is going to also be a problem as we go through the next few hours. And here is the latest track, brand new track again coming out in less than half an hour, but we are expecting a landfall sometime this afternoon, noon, 1 p.m. hour as a Category 4, and then it's going to move very quickly. The good news from this is it's not going to linger, but we're still going to feel the impacts of a devastating major hurricane, and then it's going to continue to quickly move northeast as a tropical storm. Remember, we're going to see rainfall in areas hard hit by Florence the last couple of weeks. Here's the future radar. Here's one of our computer models showing a landfall around 3 p.m. This is just one reliable forecast model. It's when that makes its northeast turn that we're going to see the impact. And then again, moving very quickly by Thursday, Friday, it's off the coast, but still bringing potential for a lot of rainfall. So hurricane warnings in effect. The time has run out here. You have to stay in place and you have to know what to do and seek shelter if you have not evacuated from some of these areas. Storm surge, that's the killer in these storms, and we're going to see epic storm surge, one that perhaps this area has never seen before, upwards of 12 feet, maybe 13, 14 feet as well, especially along that big bend on the east side of the hurricane where we typically get the worst impacts. The rainfall, 4 to 8 inches, some areas isolated amounts of 12 inches, and then of course we're concerned about the Carolinas that were hard hit by record-breaking rainfall. There certainly could get 4 to 6, even 8 inches in this area. And then power outages, of course, we're going to see widespread power outages all along the Panhandle, down towards the Big Bend, up towards Georgia and even the Carolinas. We could see power outages for days, if not weeks. And then, of course, the worst of the winds are going to come on the east side of this storm, anywhere from Panama City to Apalachicola. Hurricane force winds, major hurricane force winds for a duration of several hours. So, Heather, our prayers right now to the Florida panel. They have never experienced this in their history, and the time has really run out to escape from this.
Griff was saying the strongest landfall in 13 years. So hopefully folks heeded your warnings yesterday and the day before, and they got out, because now, like you said, it's too late. All right. Thank you so much, Janice.
Okay, Heather.
Going to be very busy today. She is. Well, one of the hardest hit areas, as you heard Janice just say, expected to be Panama City Beach, Florida. That is where we find Jonathan Siri, where there is a mandatory evacuation order. Speaking of getting out, Jonathan, what's the latest right now?
Yeah, that's right. Mandatory evacuation orders for zones A, B, and C. What that means in layman's terms is the 3 zones closest to the water, they want everyone out of here. And most people seem to be taking the warnings very seriously. We've been on this Barrier Island community during previous storms where we'd see restaurants try to stay open until the last minute, till the storm arrived. Yesterday, most restaurants and shops were already closed. People packing up their belongings, securing their homes and businesses, and leaving for higher ground. But as with any storm, there are always going to be a few holdouts. Listen.
We've just been through so many that we're comfortable staying, so we're going to. And we've got enough food and generator, gas, so we'll be just fine.
Yeah, now that the storm, though, has been upgraded to a Category 4 hurricane, forecasters and emergency managers say this is an unprecedented event. You just can't compare it to past hurricanes that have hit the Panhandle in recorded history. Governor Rick Scott is urging residents not to take any chances.
Anyone that's been asked to evacuate, don't wait. Get out and get out now. Remember, we can rebuild your house. We cannot rebuild your life. Think about your kids, your grandkids, all your family members. Take care of them.
And airlines have canceled flights in and out of Panama City today. They're hoping to resume flights tomorrow. But of course, that, Heather, depends on the conditions out at the airport tomorrow.
It sure does. So everyone, if you have power, make sure you stay tuned to Fox News because we'll have the very latest throughout the day. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Be safe down there.
Certainly.
Well, a high-stakes immigration case that could determine the fate of more than 1 million immigrants making its way to the Supreme Court. So what can we expect with Justice Kavanaugh on the bench? Here to break it all down for us, attorney and Washington Times legal affairs reporter Alex Sawyer. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about this particular case. It's Nielsen versus Preap, and it has to do with wait times for bond hearings, correct?
Yeah, it does deal with mandatory detention, and it's a series of cases that have come to the High Court recently dealing with this issue. And essentially what's going on is it's a class action, and one of the plaintiffs, the named plaintiff, was a lawful resident, so he was here legally, and was convicted of marijuana possession back in 2006. He did his time, was out, and then he subsequently had a conviction for battery, which is a misdemeanor, not necessarily a deportable crime, in 2013. At that time, the government decided to hold him and then start deportation proceedings based on the 2006 conviction.
Because the marijuana charge is subject to mandatory detention.
And so what this centers on is these immigrants saying, they're represented by the ACLU, and they say the government is looking at this one immigration law and basically using it to go after immigrants who have been released sometimes for years and try to deport them based on previous convictions that are usually, relatively minor crimes. And it's an interesting case in that the government's position is we have this authority in this law where it says that they can be released, and then it's up to DHS to whether or not to hold them. And so, it has to do with the way the law is written. And so it's going to be interesting to see the way Judge Kavanaugh comes down on this, because he doesn't necessarily have an extensive record in terms of immigration law.
And in the last term, there was another case that was heard that dealt with similar issues in terms of immigrants, and the other justices dealt with that. So he'll be kind of the new kid on the block. A lot of people saying, what will he do with this particular case, and what direction do you think he'll lean?
That's right. Last term, the majority did hold that there's no statutory right for an immigrant to have bond hearings periodically. And so it'll be interesting to see if he sides with the majority there. He does have some immigration cases that he's handled, although they don't necessarily pertain to strictly immigration law. They dealt with employment issues. There was the infamous case last year where there was the illegal immigrant minor who sought an abortion. So that kind of also dealt with abortion services. So it'll be interesting to see which way he comes down. The conservative justices in the previous case sided with the government, and it will be interesting to see if Kavanaugh follows in their footsteps.
Yeah, you mentioned that one case that he's dealt with. What about any other cases in the past that he's dealt with in terms of immigration that could signal how he'll decide moving forward?
So one interesting case has to deal with Fogo de Chao, the one Brazilian steakhouse restaurant. It was here in Washington, D.C. that they sought to bring in a chef from Brazil through the visa, right? And so the government, denied that visa. The D.C. Circuit said the government was wrong in doing that, but Judge Kavanaugh dissented and basically made the argument, which is very similar to what we heard from President Trump when he was campaigning, that there was no reason for this restaurant to bring in a Brazilian chef when there's American chefs who can be trained, can learn how to do this. That there was one line in the dissent that basically said this assumes that American chefs aren't able to either be trained or are unwilling to cook Brazilian steak.
Yeah, so that you can train American chefs to do that just as well. All right, thank you so much, Alex. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see what happens.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour. And Nikki Haley blindsiding Washington, some say, bowing out at the end of the year as the UN ambassador. Reaction, of course, is pouring in from our nation's lawmakers. We'll have that. And male, female, or X. Well, thanks to liberal Mayor Bill de Blasio, parents in New York City now have a third gender option on their newborn's birth certificate. Carly Shimkus here with both of those stories for us. She'll have all the reaction. Well, welcome back. Praise is pouring in from Washington after U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley announces her resignation. Carly Shimkus with Fox News headlines. 24/7 Sirius XM 115 is here with how she's being remembered as a fierce leader who put America first.
Yeah.
Lots of people commenting.
Yeah, Heather, that's right. She really is seeing a lot of praise on social media, and the news coming as a big surprise to many, as she has a really good relationship with President Trump, and she is seen as somewhat of a star within his administration. Vice President Mike Pence honored her on Twitter, writing, "Nikki Haley served our nation with distinction, faithfully advancing President Trump's America First agenda, and will be missed. We will always be grateful for Ambassador Haley's courage, intellect, character, and unfailing grace." The senator from her home state of South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, also responding, saying, "Ambassador Nikki Haley has done an outstanding job as United States ambassador to the United Nations and showed a level of effectiveness rarely seen by someone in this position." And Florida Senator Marco Rubio also chiming in with his gratitude, writing, "Nikki Haley has a strong voice for the U.S. and for moral clarity at the UN. America was blessed to have her representing us. We thank her and her family for their service to our country and the cause of freedom and human rights." The president, of course, also praised her during that joint press conference. Yeah. She says she is not going to run for president, right? But she will be campaigning for him in 2020.
Yeah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also tweeted out yesterday praises and said that she'll be missed. She was a huge supporter of Israel.
That's right.
In the United Nations. Let's talk about other praises now from President Trump to Kanye West. They're scheduled to meet.
Yeah, that's right. So amid all the news yesterday, Nikki Haley's resignation, Kavanaugh's first day on the job, reporters were still very curious about this upcoming meeting between President Trump and Kanye West. Here's what he had to say. Watch.
He loves what we're doing for African American jobs, poverty level at the best rate, meaning the lowest rate so far. And Kanye is a smart guy, and he sees that.
Well, Kanye West is going to meet with President Trump and Jared Kushner on Thursday to talk about prison reform, as well as how to prevent gang violence in Chicago, among other things. Irene on Twitter says at least he is trying to help Chicago, maybe bring it into the spotlight for extra help. Some jokes on social media as well. Will says, "Kanye, the new UN ambassador."
Can you imagine that?
I don't know about that. Critics may not like his support of President Trump, but he is using it to create positive change.
You know what? And they're talking. I agree with him. There needs to be a sit down between Kanye West, Colin Kaepernick, and the president.
Absolutely.
Maybe a town hall in Chicago. I'm for all of it.
A discussion doesn't hurt.
Something I don't know about, though, gender X on birth certificates.
Yeah, that's right. So male and female no longer the only options in New York on birth certificates. Mayor Bill de Blasio signing a bill adding a third gender, and a non-binary one, which is being called gender X. Watch.
This legislation is very clear. It says you can identify yourself as a male, female, or with an X on a New York City birth certificate. It's straightforward about saying each person defines that for themselves.
All right, so male, female, and gender X. More and more parents are letting their children choose their own gender. So this should come as no surprise. It's a growing trend.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about that.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so we'll move on. Thank you so much, Carly, though. I appreciate it.
Happy Wednesday. We'll move on to that.
That's good. Well, Hillary Clinton praising the left's chaos, saying this is exactly how they should be acting.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about.
Cannot be civil. Is she right, or is this a dangerous rallying cry? We'll debate it up next. But first, a live look at Mobile, Alabama. That's where you can see the wind whipping up. See the flags there. Hurricane Michael barreling toward the coast. Now a Category 4 storm. It's getting ready to make landfall just hours from now.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. That's why I believe if we are fortunate enough to win back the House and/or the Senate, that's when civility can start again.
Well, Hillary Clinton coming out hard against Republicans following the confirmation of Justice Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. But is this a dangerous rallying cry amid extreme threats leveled against many Republicans? Here now to weigh in is Republican strategist Matthew Swift and Democratic strategist Raul Alvear. Thank you both for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So, Raul, I want to start with you. What is your response to what you heard Hillary Clinton say there in that interview? That part right there, you know, civility can start again once Democrats take control, but not until then.
Yeah, no, I think Hillary Clinton is entitled to her opinion as a private citizen. But I think what we need to look at is we have a current elected official, the president, that is going to rallies as recently as last night, talking about Democrats being evil, talking name-calling, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to look at that and move from there.
Well, here's what Mitch McConnell had to say Tuesday on the Senate floor in reference to what Hillary Clinton said. Listen to this.
She told CNN exactly how she views millions of Americans who hold different political views from her own. No peace until they get their way. More of these unhinged tactics. Apparently, this is the left's rallying cry.
So, Matthew, what do you think about this whole thing?
I think this is dangerous at a time when it seems like partisan politics is truly more partisan than we've ever really seen, which especially after this last Supreme Court hearing, I don't think anybody can argue against that. We're incredibly divided right now. So for a former Secretary of State and for a former Democratic nominee for President of the United States to call for no civility during an election cycle is extremely dangerous.
And then, Raul, we had Cory Booker just this past weekend in Iowa telling people there in his speech to get in the faces of Republican politicians to let them know how they feel.
Yeah, I don't think he was literally meaning that. I think what he was saying is, look, we need to let people know about the issues that Americans care about, like health care, so on and so forth. And then again, getting back to our current elected president, people are looking for in a president that someone who's a uniter, not a divider. So I think that's where we were coming from on that point.
But you said that, you know, you didn't think that Cory Booker meant it literally. That's part of the problem, though, Matthew, right? Because some people, you can't count on people not taking this literally because they're getting in people's faces. Correct. In restaurants, getting Correct. In their faces, threatening them, you know, in elevators, sending text messages of beheadings to the wives of senators. Yeah, it's out of control.
It's out of control, and I think we need to be very careful about, again, how tense things are right now. As we have this run-up to the election coming up very soon in just a matter of weeks, we need to be careful about how serious people take these comments and these references. These are leaders of the Democratic Party, and it's sort of like this calling to arms, which is incredibly dangerous for what we're going through at this time.
So, and Raul, I know that you keep referencing, you know, President Trump and some of his tweets. Doesn't the responsibility fall on both sides, though, Democrats as well?
Yes, look, we need to go back to civility, and we need to make sure that we are running on the issues that, again, Americans care about, and talk about those issues, but do it in a way that is good for this country.
Yeah, run on the issues. Running on hate is never going to get anybody anywhere. Matthew and Raul, thank you both for joining us. Very civil debate, like that. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me. You too.
Well, the time now is about 6 minutes until the top of the hour, and this good dog throws a mean alley-oop. Look at that. The real-life Air Bud going viral.